Let's just jump right in. If you've ever felt like your full-time job is basically just copying and pasting things between 3 different browser tabs, well, you are in exactly the right place for today's explainer. We're diving straight into a really critical piece of the Intelligent Organization Framework, TIO. Specifically, we're unpacking Domain 3, which is technology, and zooming right in on Capability 3, integration. We're going to look at how we actually connect systems so that work can just flow seamlessly across your entire organization without forcing human beings to act as the manual glue. It's a game changer, so let's get into it.
Okay, let's dive into this. We've got a really highly structured journey mapped out for you today to totally demystify integration as a crucial business enabler. We'll start by looking at how disconnected systems create disconnected work. Then, we'll explore a powerful concept called the pipes versus the water. After that, we'll hit the 5 core integration behaviors, the 3 practical integration outputs you need to look for, and finally, we'll wrap up with the executive evidence rules.
So let's kick things off with our first stop, confronting the very real, visceral pain caused by a lack of integration.
And it boils down to this one simple, brutal truth. Disconnected systems create disconnected work. I really want you to let that sink in for a second. If you've ever felt like you're fighting your own systems just to get your day-to-day job done, this is going to resonate deeply. This core message completely validates the friction so many of us feel in our own enterprise environments every single day. Integration is essentially your organization's ability to connect systems, data, platforms, workflows, the whole shebang. When we lack this capability, the work simply can't move across boundaries reliably. It shatters into these isolated, super frustrating fragments.
So what does this actually look like in the wild? Well, you'll see some pretty glaring symptoms. We're talking about endless manual data rekeying and duplicate entry, constant, exhausting spreadsheet handoffs, where an entire process literally grinds to a halt just so someone can email an Excel file, or the time wasted just chasing down approvals and status updates. Ultimately, it means humans are acting as the manual glue between broken systems. And here's the thing, manual work should absolutely not be your operating model. If your systems don't talk to each other, your people are forced to manually move information, instead of, doing the high-value strategic work you actually hired them to do.
Now, what's really interesting about this next concept is how it draws a hard line in the sand. Let's talk about the pipes versus the water.
In the TIO framework, drawing absolute boundaries is how we eliminate those awful organizational turf wars and systemic paralysis. We need to clearly separate technology from data. Think of it like a giant plumbing system. Integration provides the technical infrastructure. That's the pipes. Data flow, on the other hand, manages the information payload inside. That's the water. Integration is all about the connections, making the movement possible. It owns the APIs, the middleware, the vendor gateways. Data flow, that dictates what moves, why it moves, and makes sure it arrives intact. You absolutely have to understand this distinction if you want to fix operational friction.
Let's put these side by side for a second to really see the difference. Technology integration, which sits firmly in the technology domain, measures things like latency, uptime, and system-to-system ping. So a failure here simply looks like an API timing out. Data flow, which sits over in the data domain, measures accuracy, completeness, and timeliness of the actual payload. A failure there means, hey, the system connected perfectly fine, but the report is missing half your customer records. Make sense? Integration provides the connection, data flow provides the rules of movement.
Which brings us to this punchy architect's note that I absolutely love. You can have perfect technology integration and terrible data flow. A perfectly built pipe that pumps contaminated water is a failure, right? It's so true. This perfectly cements that absolute boundary between building the connection and ensuring the data inside is reliable. You can build the fastest, most secure API on the planet, but if it's transmitting total garbage data, well, you haven't solved the business problem. Both the pipes and the water have to be managed, but they are managed as totally distinct capabilities.
Let's move away from the metaphor for a minute and get into the actual mechanics. How do organizations actually fix this?
Let's move to and see how this builds, because mature organizations don't just buy a new tool, they embed specific behaviors. And listen, this isn't just some standard IT checklist, it's a strategic sequence to get you ready for AI and automation. Step 1. Identify friction and risks. You have to find those workflows where disconnected systems are causing real pain. Step 2. Map systems and data fields. Document your source systems, target systems, and where things fail. Step 3. Prioritize by value and effort. You choose your integration work based on user pain and enterprise priority. Step 4. Connect using approved standards. Design and release those connections using solid, approved patterns. And finally, Step 5. Monitor failures and latency. Track exceptions after release. You literally have to know the exact moment a connection breaks.
Moving right along, let's look at what this actually produces. We're talking about tangible assets here.
As a leader, you need to know exactly what artifacts to look for to prove this capability is actually functioning. If you can't see these 3 practical outputs, well, the capability probably doesn't exist. First, you need an integration map. This shows your important connections and, frankly, the glaring gaps across systems. It tells you exactly where the work breaks. Second, a priority integration backlog. This turns all that operational pain into sequenced, actionable work. And third, an integration standards and ownership model. This creates repeatable rules for safe connections, so your teams aren't reinventing the wheel and debating how to build an API every single time. These 3 outputs make your connection needs visible, prioritizable, and most importantly, supportable.
So the crucial point I want to hammer home is right here regarding the priority integration backlog. We do not connect everything. Let me repeat that because it's absolutely crucial. We do not connect everything. Mature organizations don't integrate just for the fun of it or because a vendor offered some shiny new plugin. They ruthlessly prioritize. We only connect flows that create value, reduce risk, improve service, and remove manual effort. If an integration request doesn't check those boxes, it stays off the backlog, period. You have to focus your technical capacity where it actually moves the needle.
All right, let's head into our final section and talk about accountability and executive evidence.
It is one thing to say you have a great integration team. It is a totally different thing to actually prove your technology architecture is supporting intelligent work safely. The TIO framework uses this fantastic, direct executive phrasing: score evidence, not aspiration. A capability on paper means absolutely nothing if it doesn't change executive behavior or result in concrete system logs or active artifacts. You can't just wave a hand and claim you're optimized. The score is totally provisional until you can actually point to the evidence.
And this brilliantly illustrates exactly what we're looking for. To unlock true integration maturity, leaders have to demand 3 very specific pieces of executive evidence.
So let's break these non-negotiables down. First, you need mapped priority systems and API dependencies. Look, if you don't know what systems talk to each other, you are flying completely blind. Second, your integration standards for security and vendor connections actually have to be in use. It can't just be some PDF gathering dust on a shared drive. It has to be the standard actively applied to real AI use cases and automations. And third, you need active monitoring of integration health, latency, and failure rates. If you aren't tracking failure trends or naming actual owners for key workflows, you don't have an integration capability. You just have a series of disconnected, one-off tech projects.
To wrap up today's explainer, I want to leave you with a bit of a provocative question, something to help you evaluate your own operational reality. Where is manual human effort currently acting as the glue between your disconnected systems? Where are your people exporting, rekeying, copying, and chasing data instead of doing their actual jobs? Go find those friction points, because for sure, that is exactly where your integration journey needs to begin. Thanks so much for joining me today. Keep learning, keep questioning, and we'll see you next time as we continue unpacking the DNA of the intelligent organization.